Welcome to Culture Before Content. Culture Before Content from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. And now, here's your host, David Duarte.
Hey, welcome to Culture Before Content, and thank you for joining us on the Music for All podcast network. We're thankful for support from Yamaha, our national presenting sponsor. At Music for All and for all of us, our mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through music, which I know we all do every day. That's why we're here. I'm David Duarte, your host for today's episode. Oh my gosh, I think we're on episode 18. Can you believe it? 18. All right. Whether you're joining us here via Facebook Live or on YouTube, we're thrilled to have you with us. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you so much for listening, but you can't say anything live because it's already happened. You can catch the broadcast at any time on Facebook. For those of you tuning on Facebook Live, please like and share the broadcast, and don't hesitate to leave comments. You can put them even like 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years down the road. Put them on there. I love reading them. If you're on the YouTube, don't forget to show us your support by hitting the like and subscribe button to our channel and share this video across your social media platforms. You can stay connected throughout the week by diving deeper into our podcast, as new episodes are available during the week on the Music for All podcast network on both Apple Podcast and Spotify, which is perfect for tuning in on the go. Like I say every week, I listen to them in my car. It's been kind of fun. Keeps the drive alive. Your engagement does truly matter because it not only enhances the culture here, it enhances all of our culture. All right, so we're going to go pretty quick today because I want to get to our guest. Well, let's talk about last week. Glenn Fugit from Texas. Glenn emphasized the importance of student leadership, consistent fundamentals, and systemic tuning in band programs. He advocated big time for student ownership through warm-ups and using individual tuners and the use of the harmony director, which I do want to dive into more and more. He stressed that networking and seeking continuous feedback for your program was vital to your success, and that building a culture of excellence took time for him, and student engagement was crucial to his success. So if you got time, go back and watch the former podcast with Glenn. Watch any of the podcasts. Like I said, we're on episode 18 already. You got 17 others to catch up on, unless you've already watched all of them. All right. Well, let's get to the show today. I'm excited. Today, we have Dr. Matthew Arau. He is the founder of Upbeat Global and is the chair of music at the education department and associate director of bands at the Lawrence University Conservatory of Music in Appleton, Wisconsin. He is the author of Upbeat Mindset, Mindful and Leadership in Music Education and Beyond. So welcome to the show, Dr. Matthew Arau.
Hey, David, it is great to be here and joining everybody watching and listening.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny to get through the beginning of each of these podcasts. It's like, oh my gosh, can I get all this information out? Because I just want to spend time with my lovely, lovely guest.
Well, you're so efficient. It's amazing.
Whatever. I think I just talk fast and hope for the best. I think I'm even decaffeinated today. You never know what's in the, I have no idea. I think it's just tea. All right, Dr. Arau, why don't you tell us who you are and about why are you here?
Well, I'm here by the gracious invitation of you, David, and Music for All, and it's an honor to be here. I am passionate about creating cultures by design and student leadership empowerment. And those are probably some of the main reasons why you were drawn to me, including my book, Upbeat, which I know you're a big fan of, kind of visual aid. I know you're reading it on Kindle. I still like the paperback versions, but of course they're available on both.
Yeah, but you know what's really cool? It's called an iPad Kindle. Anyway, is that I have my little pen and I can highlight, and then you can take all the highlights and pull them up. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's super awesome. Yeah,
I don't like writing my books.
Ooh, I was just thinking about this book. Came out at Midwest Clinic in December 2021. Upbeat Mindset, Mindfulness and Leadership in Music Education and Beyond. And it was really a compilation of my life's work put into that. I remember at Midwest, it sold out after the first day at Midwest.
Well, a little bit of a plug for you. You know, like I said, I can't believe this is like really the first time we have ever spoken, because even in our, I mean, we've chatted a little bit, but we've never really spoken. I can't believe our paths have never really crossed. I don't know how that happened, but I went on your Facebook page for your, because again, you have all of your links in your book. You've got all your links everywhere. And I started clicking, and it is just looks like you have just the time of your life with your Upbeat.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I was thinking how this all started. Well, first of all, just to give your listeners some perspective, I grew up in California, went to Lawrence University, where I teach now, which is in Wisconsin, and then I taught in Colorado for 15 years, where I was a middle school band director for 8 years at Walt Clark Middle School, and then Loveland High School for 7 years, so for a total of 15 years. But it was in 2006 where I dove deep into student leadership, and in collaboration with my students, we created what we called the Leadership Symposium, and it was created out of sheer survival. The program, yeah, well, and I'm sure people can relate to this, right?
Well, I will give you a little prop. If you read his book, he talks about it in his chapter about where it all started. Because I think everyone thinks that all of us are like, here, just add some magic dust and we're instantly great at whatever we do. It's not true. We all start somewhere.
I always think about like how the greatest struggles in life often lead to the greatest lessons. But when you're in the middle of them, David, you don't always have like that 30,000 view looking like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to learn from this struggle or failure that's happening in the moment. But if I look back and I think if those struggles hadn't happened when I first took over the high school, where there was resistance from the senior class, there was really this toxic culture that was created. And I talk about why there was a toxic culture. But how a couple students came to me and said, hey, what can we do to help? And I was so touched that these two trombone players knocked on my office door and said that they wanted to help. And that led to having our first meeting after school. We asked questions like, what kind of band do you want to create? What traditions do you want to create? And we started training on servant leadership for the very first time. And that was a new concept back in 2006 for my students, but it led to transformational culture and empowerment of students in a really amazing way. And the Leadership Symposium continued for 7 years. And I'm really proud because my successor, Kyle Friesen, shout out to Kyle, who's been now at Loveland High for, about 12 years since I left. And he's continued the Leadership Symposium and has led to continuing a really great positive culture. But I presented at the Midwest Clinic in 2014 after I was done with all my graduate work at Boulder and was teaching at Lawrence University. And my first clinic there was called Leadership Matters, Enhance Your Music Program Through Effective Student Leadership. And that was the beginning of being on an international stage. And that led to one thing after another, where today I've been blessed to have been able to speak and teach and coach in 38 states in person and 4 continents, teaching what I call upbeat leadership around the world, which is pretty amazing.
Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of my personal thing, just to give you a little bit of incentive on today's podcast. You'll never guess what I'm doing next week with my own students. It's time to start thinking about next year's leadership. And we're going to do things maybe a little different. We don't know, because it's one of those things where I let the students decide where we're going to go, and I just guide that thing. So I want you to put that in your brain a little bit as we talk today, because I'm going to be like, I'm going to write this down on see, I always tell people I carry my pad with me wherever I go so I can write down all of my notes. But yeah, I was like I said, I was looking on your Facebook, and you have been everywhere doing this, and everything. The thing that strikes me, there's always a smile on your face, which I think speaks volume, not only about what you do, but what you believe in.
Yeah, well, it's definitely authentic and real. That's really important to me. Is even the cover of the book, looks bright and people can look at this. And I actually had a teacher. They said, I bought your book, but I just wasn't in a space to read it. I just wasn't coming out of the pandemic. I just wasn't in a space to read it. I thought it was going to be too positive. and I want to share that this is the opposite of toxic positivity. I just want to get that out there right away. This is the opposite of toxic positivity. I've been in the trenches. I've been on the front line. I've been there teaching virtually in the pandemic. I know how hard our lives are as teachers. I fought the battles. I had a superintendent trying to cut music when I was a middle school band director. I fought the battles to fight for music. I've been there. I know the challenges that we all face. And I'm there with the teachers. This is anything but toxic positivity. What this is acknowledging the challenges, but finding a positive way forward. David,
well, one of the things, I was gonna say, one of the things I appreciated is you have every chapter, how it has some ideas to work on. It has, things to journal about. And the thing that strikes me is you have a little story from everybody and someone. So, it's a little bit of a validation and maybe a little bit of a different view on each of the chapters inside of that book.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. We have a vignette for all 12 chapters from teachers from all age levels, representing really general music, band, choir, and orchestra. And they're real stories about how these teachers have put into real like practical strategies they've taken from my teachings and put them into their classrooms to great success. And so it's neat to have, really, there's 14 voices in the book because Tim Lessenheiser did the foreword. There's my voice and then 12 other teachers, which is, by the way, really exciting because we're in the midst of recording the audiobook.
Oh,
So
really?
When that comes out, yeah. I know there's a lot of teachers, and that's why it's foremost on my mind, because so many teachers commute, and audiobooks are great. But I'm excited because there will be all 14 voices in the audiobook when it finally gets released on Audible. Yeah,
that's awesome. Because I was thinking it's funny because we're all in different places right now. Some people, I know some of my friends have been out for a couple of weeks already. I still have three weeks and 2 days to go. And where I'm at, so like finding time personal. I just finished my musical, so like finding personal time has been like, it's like, oh wow, did you know there's things to do in the evening besides come home and panic for the next day. But like I said, audiobooks are great. My problem with audiobooks for me is if I don't listen to them in the car and I try to listen to them at home, I'll start to get, I will ADD out on all those things. But I love them in the car because they do focus. Because there's a book in there that you mentioned in your, which is the Daniel Covey book in there. I listened to that one in the book, and I listened to that one in my car. And I think that must have been the most fascinating time because an audiobook back and forth to work, I was showing up to work inspired to go to the next thing. And it's like, I will buy that audiobook.
Oh, were you talking about the Daniel Coyle Culture Code?
Yeah, Daniel Coyle. I would say, I think
Coyle,
Stephen Covey. Yeah, it was Culture. Sorry, it was Culture Code, and it was just fascinating because you reference it in your book, and that was like the book that kind of made me realize a little bit who I am personally, and it was that aha moment, and that's kind of your book too. It's kind of those aha moments. It's just like, oh my gosh, these are sometimes they're descriptions, sometimes they're things that I need to think about, and sometimes they're things I want to strive for.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I hope when I wrote the book, I tried to write a book that I would enjoy reading. And I love books with stories. I love books that are research based, like really deep research based. And I love books that have practical strategies. So, every chapter has the vignette, but then it has an application section of like 5 direct applications you can put into effect like right away. It has journal reflective questions, and then it's got quotes. I love quotes because a teacher could just take one quote like you do, David. I've seen in your classroom, just take one quote and put it on your whiteboard and or your smart board, and then students can reflect on that one quote.
I'm in that weird place where I have a projector that's too high, and then I have a whiteboard that's a whiteboard, and you dream of the one that goes right in the middle. That would be perfect. So I'm going to answer your question that the audience doesn't know. So I sent Dr. Arau a picture of my whiteboard, and I have leadership quotes. And here's the story. So I was doing my musical, and one of my students, who is an incredible pianist and bassoon player, he handed me a free book of Abraham Lincoln quotes. And then I didn't think, I said, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, set it down. And then I put it on my desk, and then I started reading it. And then what I found out, it's like, oh my gosh, there is so much relevancy in there. And I call my teaching the 3-ring circus. So one day a group of students was working in the band room with the student leader. I was going back and forth, and I said, here, run this, and I'm going to be back in about 5 minutes. And so she was in there, and she read the book and didn't hear any of my questions because she got so involved with books. Anyway, she started finding books. She goes, this applies to band, and she put a little sticky pad in there. So what we did last week was we put leadership quotes that we felt applied to us, or something that was either a change or needs to be a change. And we used that for the whole whiteboard all of last week.
Wow. Yeah, that's really impressive.
Yeah. So it's what's impressive is it really was student driven twice. 1, the student brought me the book. 2, the student took an interest, and we both said the same thing. I couldn't put this book down. I thought it was just, what I thought was a joke at first, ended up being, wow, this is really valuable. This is valuable. And again, just like your book, every time I've read, like I go back and read the vignettes, and I go back and I read the questions, I have a different answer. It's almost like every time I read the book, it's new, because I have a different answer when I have time in between. And I think that's what the biggest aha moment from your book is. It just reads different every single time. Every chapter that I've read again, I'm like, let me think about this differently. And a lot of it is because I've been going to work in between reading the chapters, and then something either like, oh, I do, we all like this. Oh, I do that, or I'll never do that. And next thing I know, I was like, how do you do that? And so I think maybe I should ask you a question. Like, can you share an example of how a shift in mindset has transformed a music program that you've worked with, or even an individual that worked with? So let's talk about this mindset that you got going.
Yeah. Okay. Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'll share, David, that when I discovered Carol Dweck's work on mindset and growth and fixed mindset, it was transformative for me. And I wish I could have done my whole teaching career over again. I'm not even kidding. And actually, I didn't discover Carol Dweck until 2014, even though she wrote her first book, Mindset, in 2006. It didn't reach me until just before I was about to start teaching college. And that was also around the same time I was discovering like Daniel Coyle's talent code, right? And all that stuff. And so it was all kind of coalescing at the same time. And I thought, gosh, I used to think of my students as talented and not talented or less than talented. And I thought, gosh, if I could do it all over again, I would. And I've been on a national or international crusade since then to eviscerate the word talent from music education, because it limits us. It limits us. It limits our students. And even if, I'm not going to get into the nature nurture debate, but I just want to teach the students where they're at, right? And think that they have unlimited potential. So it's my job to find the strategies to help them get, and the support system to help them get from wherever they are to as far as they want to go, and not let my limiting beliefs be the ceiling on their achievement. And so I'll just start with that, but I have so much more to share with you about how it's impacted programs. But David, I know you were about to share something.
Yeah, it's kind of that thing that I believe in, because we're in this standards based world lately in public education, and I think the two things that strike me and what you're saying is it's proficiency versus growth. And when you have somebody like I hate to say this, but I showed up to high school band. I'm that weird kid that knew all his scales. I actually knew my minor scales. I'm that kid. So if you're gonna if in a standards based world, if you're gonna test me on any subject, I'm gonna pass, and I'm gonna get. I always say this. I would be kind of bored because I didn't have that growth mindset. And I didn't think about that until I became a teacher. I can take an all-state player and I can take somebody who just started their instrument and I can kind of teach them. And that's why when you say talent, and again, this goes back from your book, but when you talk about talent, that's why we avoid the word talent, because everybody can grow. I think it's actually harder for someone with a higher aptitude. That's my new keyword. With a higher aptitude to grow, because they either have solved it to an nth degree that we're trying to find that next thing and to push them higher. And I think that's what you speak about all the time. It's not really about the talent. It's just about taking that kid, any kid, and pushing them forward positively.
Yeah. So one of the things I address, which is so major, and I was just two days ago. I've been traveling so much, but I was just in outside of Columbus, Ohio. 7 high schools coming together, and before that, I was in Arizona, Phoenix. I've just been traveling like crazy, right? But when I talk to students, I hit self-talk hard, and I talk about our self-talk. And I'll ask 6 questions. So let me just go ahead and throw these out here, David, and I'll ask you. Okay. So,
all right.
All right, here we go. And this is for your listeners. Raise your hand if you think it's important to treat others with kindness, or say yes. Okay. Is it important? Raise your hand if you think it's important to treat others with compassion.
Oh, wait, you know what? I should probably do this for my listeners who are not watching. So the last question, I did raise my hand, and I'm raising my hand. I'm just going to say yes.
Okay. So say yes if you think it's important to find this space in your heart to forgive others.
Yes.
All right. But now let's go to a deeper level. And I always like to get real and authentic with students, and they appreciate this so much, because oftentimes when I go so deep with the students, they share with me that they've never had adults talk with them the way that I talk with them. Because we get so real so fast, and we create such a trusting, vulnerable connection. It's pretty amazing. So the next 3 questions are this: even though you think it's important to treat others with kindness, do you often find that you don't treat yourself with the same level of kindness?
That is a good question. I'm not sure I can say yes or no. Like I said, I think I don't think it's about kindness. I think I'm evaluative, and that it's what I could have done to have done it better. So I don't think I treat myself unkind out of practice. So
great.
Maybe. So I can say maybe then.
Yeah. And then the next question is, even though you think it's important to treat others with compassion, do you often not extend that same compassion to yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
When I do.
Okay. And then the third one is really interesting, as I'll say, even though you think it's important to find that space in your heart to forgive others, do you often find that the last person you can forgive is you?
Yes, because when I become a teacher, and I bet a lot of just us out there will answer the same way, I don't matter as much as what I'm doing because I'm so involved about the product
Mhm.
instead of
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens is, first of all, when you ask this in a group and you see so many hands going up, yes, on all 6 questions, now all of a sudden the students realize they're not alone. Because self-talk is you don't know what other people are thinking about. All of a sudden now I take an audience and it could be 10 to 500 students or teachers. I'll ask the same questions to teachers. All of a sudden everybody's hand is up and you realize, wow, we are all so hard on ourselves and our self-talk can be so critical and often even mean and degrading and deprecating. But then we talk about the damage that can do, that our self-talk is. What I share is how we treat ourselves is a reflection of how we treat others, and how we lead ourselves is a reflection of how we lead others. So what's the solution? I also share that we don't talk about self-talk in education. And oftentimes when I go out to schools, and I recently, as you know, I've been in Canada, I've been in Australia, I'm headed to Thailand in a couple of months. And when I ask these questions around the world, same responses. I really think we need to address self-talk in education because it affects culture too. But then I want to share a solution for us because we are so critical. And I think sometimes as musicians, it's ingrained in us to be critical. It's almost like the way we're trained as musicians to find the mistakes and get after them. So then we can't turn it off. We can't turn it off when we're not making music. But for me, the answer is to begin with this: treat yourself like you are your best friend. Treat
Mm.
yourself like you are a loved one. And so I think that if we can get to this place where we can love ourselves and see ourselves and treat ourselves like a best friend and kind of step outside of yourself and say, like, hey, if a friend came to me and said something mean about themselves, how would I respond to them? Well, I'd probably respond to them with something encouraging. I'd probably remind them of something that they overcame in the past to remind them they can overcome something in the present. And that's what we need to do when we're facing a challenge. Confidence is really about knowing that I can find a solution for the challenge that's facing me because I've learned that I've done it in the past. But so often in the present, when we find a challenge, we either give up or think, oh, we're not good enough, we're not going to be able to do it. But what we need to do is remind ourselves, yeah, this is a new challenge. But if I look back at my life, I have overcome challenges in the past. I just need to be patient and creative and find the solution going forward to meet this current challenge. That seems to really help students, and they're super grateful. And there's a lot of just like, mind-blowing moments for the students. We're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm going to start doing that. But you asked a question about how has the mindset particularly impacted programs. And I want to share a story with you that is so incredible that it is a program in Calgary, Canada. And coming out of the pandemic, a school district, the Calgary Catholic School District, which is a large school district with 118 schools and 63,000 students and 6,500 teachers,
Wow.
grades K through 12. Okay. And Chris Herrard at the time was a high school band director. Now he's the fine arts coordinator. But when he was the high school band director there, he organized purchasing 300 copies of Upbeat and gave them to all grades 6 through 12 instrumental music teachers as a book study. And they brought me in on Zoom to lead 3 different sessions. And one of the sessions I was with the teachers, one of the teachers said, Matthew, Upbeat changed my life. And I said, wow, that's incredible. How did Upbeat change your life? And so we brought her on to the screen and she unmuted and she shared, and her name's Harriet. And she said, my morale was really low. And of course, I think most of our listeners could relate to this pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, a lot of low morale for many obvious reasons, right? But her morale was particularly low because they had just had registration. And for all the music teachers listening, registration, like, man, that just brings back, lots of memories and emotional pain sometimes, right? When you like pour your heart and soul into students and then they decide not to continue with music. It's hard not to take it personally, right? So here's the situation.
Oh, yeah.
She had 90 students in 7th grade band, and they just had registration. And she went to the counselor to see how many were continuing into 8th grade band. And so the counselor went to the computer, opens up the computer, does the research, says, you have 45 students continuing into 8th grade band. And Harriet was really bummed because, of course, that meant 50% were not continuing, and that's what she focused on. But she just happened to get a copy of Upbeat in the mail that very day. And she started reading it. She read the prelude, the introduction, the foreword. She read chapter 1, which is called Choosing Your Upbeat, and then chapter 2, The Power of Get. And the power of get is something that completely changed her life. And she read The Power of Get, and that I share this story where it just completely changed my mindset and led to something very powerful where I now look at life as a series of gets rather than have to do's or must do's. It's like everything in my life is a get to do now. You want to make a to-do list. It's like, I get to do this. I get to do that. I get to do that. I get to do that. And it came from a reflection, actually, a journaling on September 12, 2020, when I was reflecting on my 9/11, when I was a middle school band director in my 5th year of teaching. And reflecting on that day and then also the power of music on that day. And one of the things I reflected on was playing Amazing Grace with my 8th grade band on 9/11, when we decided to turn the TV off and just express ourselves through music, when we discovered the true superpower of music, which affirms when words fail, music speaks. And upon journaling on 9/11, I started making a to-do list. But one thing was added, something in my mind just flipped, being in the midst of the pandemic and thinking about 9/11. And what I added was the word get. So it was kind of like the same things you do every day, but it was I get to. And I started thinking, why is get so powerful? And I realized get is powerful in ways that yet is powerful. So I started thinking about Carol Dweck and the power of yet, and her TED talk on the power of yet. And she says, if a student says you can't do something, we respond, you can't do it yet, right? And yet is powerful because
Right.
it's about hope, right? It's about the future. That's why it's so powerful. It's a wonderful word to use in creating cultures. But then I stepped back and said, well, why is get making me so fired up? And I realized it's because get is about the present moment. It's about right now. Like right now, David, you and I, we get to have this conversation. It's amazing. It's amazing. We're coming together, right? And we're connecting. It's amazing. This is the only moment. The present moment is the only moment that's guaranteed.
Right.
And we can be obsessed about the past, and then sometimes it can fill us with guilt and shame. We can be worried about the future that hasn't even happened, or we can be fully present. And so I added meaning to the letters GET. G is for gratitude. I decided rather than withholding appreciation for others, I'm going to share it openly. I'm going to look for what brings me gratitude daily, and it's really changed my mindset. And then E stands for enthusiasm. To live life fully, to live full out with enthusiasm. And T is for treasure. And what I mean by treasure is to treasure the people in our lives. But on a deeper level, I recognized during the pandemic that there was a lost or hidden treasure. And what I realized was that many of us, particularly teachers, we'd forgotten about the treasure within us, that each one of us is a treasure. We're givers. We've been giving. And sometimes we'd forgotten about the light within ourselves, that we needed to restore our light and have our light shine brightly, and remember that we are a treasure, that we deserve, to fill our cup and take care of ourselves, so that we can shine brightly. And so that's what GET is. And so back to Harriet, she was reading this book and a switch went off in her mind, and she went back to school the next day and she said, you know what? I'm just grateful to get to be your music teacher. And she told the students, I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful that we get to play music. I'm so grateful that we get to make music in person together. And instead of focusing on the 50% or the 45 students that were leaving band, she just focused on all of them in the present moment, how much she loved working with them. And they created a power of get wall, a gratitude wall. And the students started writing gratitude notes and putting those yellow sticky notes on the wall. And they would spend time at the beginning of rehearsal just sharing what they were grateful for with each other. Boom. And she took time for that. Well, 2 weeks later, her classroom was transformed. Harriet was a new woman. She was just an incredible energy. And even folks that know Harriet have shared, she went through this transformation. And I got to work with Harriet's band in person last month. It was so incredible to get to work with her and her students. But here's the deal. She went back to the counseling office and she said, I think that some of the students that dropped out of band have decided to stay in band. And so the counselor went on the computer, and instead of there being 45 students out of 90 continuing with band, the counselor shared astoundedly, she was amazed. She said, Harriet, there's 100 students signed up for 8th grade band. Harriet said, how is that possible? I only have 90 in the 7th grade band. She cross-checked everything. 100% of the students decided to stay in band. And then Harry said, but what about those extra 10? It turned out those were the kids in the hallway. They were friends of kids in the band. They'd heard that this is like the most positive place to be in the school. And so students were coming out of the woodwork to join band. And it's just amazing because that's an example of a mindset shift. One mindset, whose mindset shifted? The teacher's mindset shifted. And when the teacher's mindset shifted, everything shifted in the classroom. The culture shifted, recruitment and retention shifted. When I went out to her school, I got to share an Upbeat leadership session with her 7th grade band, which was humongous. It was massive. And it was just so exciting to see. And I did want to share that because to me, it's such a profound impact, truly from a mindset shift.
That's an incredible story. I'm a firm believer, and this is my next question. How do you get someone who thinks to themselves, I just can't change my mindset? What advice do you have? Because I think a lot, you said that COVID was kind of damaging for many of us. And I'm seeing it, right now. We talked about this in the last couple of shows. There's budget cuts everywhere. Federal funding has gone down everywhere. It's run out, so to speak. And there's all these people, and I see a different mindset from some of my own friends. But I think what I'm trying to say is, what advice do you have for teachers out there? How do you get people to even look at themselves or even think about changing their mindset?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am absolutely empathetic for the challenges of all teachers, for sure. And that's one of the advantages I have of being able to travel so much is that I see the state of education all over the country. And I work in all areas of the country where there's massive economic challenges, right? Facing just massive budget cuts, and just so many challenges facing teachers. One of the things I talk about is our own mindset from the moment we wake up in the morning. I try to focus on what we can control, David, because there's so much out of our control. And, Stephen Covey was probably the first one to really address this in the personal growth literature with his 7 habits of highly effective people when he talked about your circle of influence. And so I like to think about, we talk about choosing our upbeat, and you really choose your upbeat. Really, you can think about it from the moment you wake up in the morning. And for example, I choose to wake up to an opportunity clock. I try to think about that, right? Yeah, that now now you think about the power of language, right? And I actually got that from Zig Ziglar. I was listening to a motivation CD, and he said the opportunity clock. I thought, oh my gosh, that's powerful. But then I learned, what we focus on becomes sticky. Like thoughts can become sticky. And so when you wake up in the morning, you can begin by thinking of like one of 4 things and focus on that for 17 seconds. And those things are, think of something that brings you joy, something that gives you comfort, something that you're grateful for, so gratitude. Or the 4th is, what are you looking forward to that day? And if you can like zero in on one of those 4 things for 17 seconds, that's enough time for a thought to become sticky. And when a thought becomes sticky, we start to see more things in our reality, in our space that we're looking at. We start to notice more things that we're grateful for. And if we can begin our day on a positive note before we even get to school, right? And then as we get to school, we can set our intention for what the kind of day we want to create, and not let ourselves be a pinball in a pinball machine, which is my metaphor. I know I've seen this movie about pinball, and I know that there's strategies to pinball for like really great pinball players, but not for me. Like I see that pinball just going like randomly around, but I know there's pro pinball players out there, but that figured it out. But for me, I don't want to live life like a pinball, like randomly, haphazardly. I want to feel like I can create the day that I want to. And so much of it begins with my own mindset and setting an intention, or what I call blueprinting the day. That doesn't mean I'm going to control all the actions of other people. But the one thing I can control is my own mindset. And I can set intentions like I'm going to set a goal to brighten students' days today. I'm going to set a goal to, ask students how they are and really wait and care. I'm going to set an intention for if a student comes into my office to talk, I'm actually going to turn away from my computer and face them and turn to them and give them my undivided attention, because I want them to know that in that moment, they're the most important student. So there's things that I can do even amidst the chaos, even amidst the challenge of all the stuff happening around us, and think about how can I still be at my best for my students, and so that, because they deserve our best, even amidst all the challenges. But that doesn't mean that I dismiss them. But what I like to focus on is being a solution finder, because how many of us hang out with complainers and blamers who don't offer an alternative, right? And that often happens. And then we kind of go down that negative spiral. So one of the things I like to share is, rather than focus on what is wrong, focus on what you want to create. Rather than focus on what is wrong, focus on what you want to create. That's even a different mindset than, rather than focus on what is wrong, focus on what is right. It's a different mindset, isn't it? Because now, yeah. And I think as music teachers, we have this creative mindset, and we can plug into that. And now we can be part of the solution rather than just bemoaning the problem. And I think that mindset shift can lead to really creative solutions, can lead to teamwork, relationship building. I should share, David, that there are advantages to focusing on positives. When we get into what I call the positive realm, which you can get into the positive realm just by sharing something nice about somebody. Like, David, I love that color shirt on you. It's for the listeners. I think it's kind of like a burgundy. It just really highlights the colors of your face, and brings out your nice beard and all that good stuff. So I just shared a positive with David, maybe made him blush a little bit. But you know what? Sharing positives with David made me feel good too. And we can make a choice to do that. When we share a positive with somebody else, we literally get in what I call the positive realm. And to get into some neuroscience, we stimulate our prefrontal cortex and neocortex. And when that happens, when we're in the positive realm, we actually elevate so many aspects of our life. We actually are better at relationships, teamwork. We're more creative. Our intelligence goes up, believe it or not. We're smarter when we're positive. That's incredible. And our physiology goes at a higher level. We're actually physically more fit, believe it or not, when we're in the positive realm. And I think about all that we want from our students and all that we want from ourselves as a teacher. So if we can focus on gratitude, which is really, really powerful, and it's been researched immensely in the psychology world, when we can get in that space, we elevate ourselves, and then we're in a position to elevate others.
Well, what comes to mind through all of this is something that has been very helpful to me in talking to people like you, which is, you don't have to spend 24/7 on music. And if you do spend 24/7 on music, sometimes that becomes a part of the mistake. It's okay to give up time. You even had it in your book about the fun Fridays. And I thought, I have variations of all this, and some of the things I've learned. This is a 3-day weekend. For some of you, it's like it's a 2.5 month day weekend. Happy Memorial Day to everyone out there. But asking the kids to share something positive from their weekend is a fantastic tool. And I have made that one of my things that I have to be better at. Listening. We all like to talk. See, I'm doing it now. I like to talk, but sometimes I forget to listen. And that is one of the things that I learned from these idea days. Like, the kids want to play, maybe the kids do want to play some fun music. That's how I ended up with this funny concert that's coming up. We do a pops concert at the end of the year. And sometimes I get on my high horse to say, we still got to do this, that, and the other thing. But you know what you can do? You can teach from any piece of music. I'm just throwing that out there, teachers. It doesn't have to be Lincolnshire Posey. You don't have to do the fourth movement. You can do ABBA Gold and actually teach the same concepts and still teach. But I think we need to sometimes realize we are also a psychologist for the people in the room, including ourselves. So take time out of that music classroom to do that. It's not necessarily team building as it is you building, as it is we building.
I love that. We building. I'm so glad you brought up listening also, because for me, I think there's so much we can learn from music to bring into how we listen to each other. I teach what I call the 5 levels of listening in music. And I'll go ahead and share what those are. The first level is you listen to yourself, right? Listen to yourself while you're playing. And by the way, when you change these levels of listening, you will absolutely change the sound of the ensemble. It's really incredible. When everybody changes listening, every single level will change the sound of the ensemble. Level 2 is to listen to somebody that has the same part as you. Right? Within the same section, by the way. Okay. Level 3 is listen to somebody within the same section that has a different part. That's really cool. Level 4 is listen across the band to somebody who has the same part as you in a different section. And then level 5 is listen across the band to listen to somebody who has a different part than you. And as you change your levels of listening, what's happening, of course, you're expanding your ears. You're expanding who you're listening to. It might start off, you're listening to your trio, which is really great, blend and balance. And then you expand. You start to see how your part fits in with every other part. And what I love to share is that if we could teach our students to listen to each other in terms of human to human communication, inside and outside of music classes, in the way that we teach students to listen to each other when we play chamber music or when we're really listening deeply for intonation. If we could do that, we could really elevate society right at the beginning with the culture of our program as models of how we can interact and honor each other by listening authentically. And I think that's so important. Coming out of the pandemic, it's true that a lot of students have lost communication skills. And so we need to set up opportunities for students to practice. When I come out and work with a program, it's incredible. I'll do, communication circles where you have the inner outer circle and the students have a partner, and then you switch this inner circle and now the students have a new partner, and I'll give questions and topics for students to discuss. Students will share afterwards, hey, I've been in this band with the student for 3 or 4 years and I've never talked to them. And they're actually really nice. And so we actually have to set up opportunities. What we find is when students connect with each other, listening to each other, honoring each other, guess what? It elevates every aspect of the music program. It actually elevates performance level now when you care about the people that you're sitting next to. And it can lead to what I call cultures of celebration, which I'd love to see a lot more of that, where we take time for students to just celebrate, whether it's the shuffle, the orchestra shuffle on the feet, or the golf clap, or whatever it is, or sometimes even just breaking into cheers when somebody maybe accomplishes a really difficult passage or somebody shows incredible improvement, that we take time to honor that. Because I know we're so focused on getting it right. Sometimes we forget to focus on what's growing and getting better. And I call that creating a culture of celebration. And students respond so well to that. That's a motivational pathway, because then students want more of that rather than focusing on what you don't want, focus on what you do want.
What's a celebration that you have for yourself?
Oh, I love that question. I'll tell you what, I get so rewarded when I get to travel and meet teachers from all over the country and students from all over the country. It's really meaningful to me when teachers and students come up afterwards and share how the session has impacted them, or they reach out afterwards. It keeps me going because I am on the road so much, and there's times it's exhausting, those canceled flights and those delays in the airport and all the aspects of traveling, right? I post about like the 30-hour flight to Sydney, Australia, for example, and no complaints about that, by the way, but that's part of the reality. But I take a lot of time to focus on gratitude myself, and to oftentimes just to think of how grateful I am to have these opportunities to meet, connect, because I grow and learn every single time I'm with a group of students. I'm open to growth and sharing, and I am a better person after each interaction, whether it's because I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with teachers, I do group coaching, then of course I do in-person sessions, upbeat leadership sessions, mindset, mindfulness sessions, and I'm always growing. I just feel so fortunate and lucky to live a life of impact, of making a difference. And I think that's what we all want. I share with people, David, I'll just add this here. I share that I think there's 6 things that we all want and need. And I'll share this with student leaders. So we can chat about student leadership real quickly. I'll share with student leaders. I say, everybody needs these 6 things. And if you can make sure that the people around you get these 6 things, and you also get these 6 things, you're going to be an incredible leader. And here's what I believe everybody wants out of life. I think everybody wants to feel valued.
Oh, yeah.
I think everybody wants to feel that they matter. I think everybody wants to feel that they make a difference. I think everybody wants to feel loved. I think everybody wants to feel connection or connected. And everybody wants to feel that they belong. And if we can work as teachers, student leaders, and just members of the ensemble to make sure that everybody around us feels that, and it takes an effort. We can't assume that our students know that they're valued, or that they don't always know what we think inside. Like, we have to be direct with them. We have to let them know how much they matter, and we have to be intentional about creating cultures of belonging. It just doesn't happen. We have to really work at it. And for me, one of the most important things we can do to create cultures is to work collaboratively with our students. And as you recall from my book, Upbeat, I preach a leadership model that is collaborative rather than top-down. And top-down model may have worked decades ago, but I am a real fan of bringing in student voice and input, as you are, David, as well, and involving them in the process, the creative process, to be musicians who can be independent and interdependent, treating them like young adults, treating them with respect and dignity. It's not my band. It's our band. It's a family, right? We're in this together. Absolutely.
Well,
And that's a big change.
You said something that I want to speak to, which is, sometimes these students, that they may not come off, they may be standoffish, they might be mouthy. Sometimes that is a cry for the exact opposite feel. Like, they may actually need to feel loved. They actually might need to be, and the outward projection that some of these students, that's one of the other things I've had to learn as I've gotten older, is sometimes these kids, and I think when I get to a mouthy kid or sometimes I learn by talking to the parent, like, this might be the reason, or, there might be freedom in band there and constriction at home, or even the reverse. There might be constriction at home, or a constriction in band and freedom at home. And they're trying to make things too, because they don't understand. So I think it is important to talk to our students. I tell my students all the time, this is like, one thing, we are remembered for how we make people feel. And that's both student and that's both teacher. And I always say that in our conversation. I try to remind kids about that when we speak across the band, because you'll get that kid that blurts out something accidental, mean to thing, and you're like just kind of wide-eyed going, how do I say this tactfully without tearing that kid down in front of my band? We don't say that kind of thing, what we've met, and so, but I just wanted to say that, like, sometimes we have to remember we are not teaching adults with their own self-management. They can't always do it. And we have to, even at the most negative, guide them through that process and attack them. I'll say this: if you want to earn my attention, and probably even more, is either act out, because I'm going to give you 10 times more attention, because I'm in my brain going, how do I solve this? How do I make this? How do I make it so you need a hug? I can't hug kids anymore, but do you need a hug? Because that's what I feel like half of our teaching is. Our kids want a hug. Our kids want to feel us. They want to know that we care. And sometimes, even if they don't show it, audience members, they do. They totally do. I'm old enough to say I have met students 20, 30 years past when I've met them, and they will always come back and say, you were the saving grace of my day. And I always remember that at times when I get my most frustrated. These kids need us, and we have to remember that even when they don't feel it. Because like I said, I talked to you about the smaller versus, smaller school thing. Yep. And my question on that is because in a larger school, I hate to say, like, one of the schools I taught at, there was 2,800 kids in the student body. And, my student, right now we have about 1,000. It's different. The competition is in there. If I always hate to say this, if this one kid ever quit, there would be none of that section anymore. Whereas in some other schools, it's like, we got 3 extra all-staters down there. Well, do what you can't have that mindset. Everybody's important. But I did want to ask you a question on you had a quadrant in your book. And it was like, and that's I think that was one of the most impactful things that I'm like, that's going on the board. Cool. And because cool. I think, and it really comes down to, I had a student, and like I said, I like to share my things. You had the upbeat leader and the authority leader on the high expectation side. And I think that is some of the even sometimes we as leaders, we sometimes come from an authoritarian perspective. And again, it's semantics do matter. How you present them matter. So can you talk about that quadrant maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I'll just, for if people are watching this on YouTube, but just kind of trying to get this on the screen here. Okay.
There you go.
A little bit. Okay, cool. So, all right, there you get the idea. So let me just kind of share. So there's 4 quadrants, and our goal is to be what I call an upbeat leader. And so an upbeat leader is supportive and has high expectations. So I want to share that being a positive leader doesn't mean that quality goes down. In fact, quality goes up. Because when you believe in the unlimited potential of your students, you're going to push more. You're going to have higher expectations. And that's a good thing. When it comes from that intention that I believe in you, I believe that you have more to give. You can have the highest standards, but you got to provide the supports, that encouragement, that celebration along the way, that we versus I, me, it's working together, that collaborative spirit. That's what it means to be an upbeat leader. Then there's 3 other quadrants. Okay, so you mentioned authoritarian leader. That's somebody who also has high expectations or is incredibly demanding. I have the image of that. But what they don't provide is the supports. And they often make it about themselves. Like, it's about me, it's my band. And I know teachers that were like that. David, raising his hand. Okay. And then the permissive leader, which I think is really important to talk about. That's somebody who is supportive, but has low expectations. We see this a lot in student leadership. And the reason is because students struggle with wanting to be friends with those that they're leading. And it's really hard to be a student leader. And I shared at the Midwest Clinic in 2014. I think student leadership is the most difficult form of leadership because you truly don't have like any formal authority. You can't hire and fire, anything like that. And every day you're earning respect. Even if you got the title, that doesn't mean things are going to like be easy for you. And so students are like, how can I be a friend and still be a leader to make those hard decisions? And so we talk about it that you actually are being a friend when you have high expectations, because again, you're saying that I believe in you. So it's about that intention that you come from. When you just let things slide and say, oh, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, you're actually saying, I don't believe in you. And you're lowering trust. And that's a lesson that's hard to learn. And I get it, because there's probably nothing more important to a teenager than friends, right, at that time. But we talk about that, and they can absolutely relate to that. And then the last one is the neglectful leader, which is low expectations and unsupportive. And the neglectful leader usually happens when a student didn't really want to be a leader, and they were just sort of like, there was nobody else, so they became a leader with a title, or they got senioritis, and they're just really not invested. I call them the meh leader, the MEH. It's like, meh, meh. Yeah. And the students also relate to that. And so now having these quadrants, now there's a goal. Now there's like a goal to strive for of where we can head.
Well, here's the scary part. We've already gone 53 minutes, and I have like not even really started asking any of my questions. So I'm gonna do a little bit of summary here. Otherwise, we could go for hours. I could go for hours. I'm just saying that to all my people out there. But one of the things is, first off, you can contact Dr. Arau. His email is matthew@upbeatglobal.com. That's Matthew, MATTHEW @upbeatglobal.com. And I guarantee you, this incredibly positive human being would be more than glad to talk to you, share with you. Just get a hold of him. And I encourage many of you to go to his website and just check it out, because it is awe-inspiring. And I would encourage everybody out there to get this book. It is truly out there for you, for your advantage. And I wanted to say, just to like hit one more thing, and I'm gonna let you give us our final cultural word there. But you talked about systemic process in your book, and that's what I saw about this is creating. I'm a big person about rubrics and systemic process, because that's how I get better. That's my growth mindset. Is I do something, I give 100% failing all the time, and then the next time I do it, I get like 1%, but I did 100%. So I'm never doing anything intentionally bad in my world. I just have to keep trying to find a way to do it better. And this chart was like, oh my God, I can totally create a rubric for this for my students. And use systemic process to get them to see or become aware or make a change or not make a change. I'm not there to control anybody. But what are some of your thoughts? I mean, it's scary, but I don't feel like we talked about anything other than like a couple of items, and we could go 100 more hours on this. What are some advice you have for the listener out there or the viewer? What are some final thoughts from Dr. Arau?
Well, first of all, I'm a huge fan of music educators who give themselves every single day because they care about students. and they really put students first. And I think we're all drawn to music education for different reasons, but the longer we're in the field, we realize that it is about students and our absolute belief in their unlimited potential. And the only ceiling on their achievement, I believe, is the ceiling that we put on ourselves and on our students. So for me, it's all about personal growth and personal development, becoming like a better version of myself every single day so that I can be there for my students. In terms of creating culture, I think it's really important to be clear on your own values and priorities as a human being, like what matters to you, and being clear on that, because I think burnout happens oftentimes when, one, our expectations don't meet reality, and two, if we're working in a work environment that is not in alignment with our own true values and priorities. And that can be really challenging when we're not congruent. So if our classroom or our ensembles has a culture that's not congruent with who we are, we need to work on making change. And so be clear on what matters to you, and then collaborate with your students so they can go through this process with you on values and priorities that matter to them and you. So now you're creating a we, us environment and creating culture collaboratively. So deciding what matters and what do you want to have more of? What do you want to change? What do you want to keep? And of course, the book goes deep into vision, mission creation, and clarity, and the 4 C's of upbeat leadership, which are character, competence, connection, and clarity. And we really go deep into that, and incorporating mindfulness into our own life and then bringing it into the classroom is incredible for lowering stress and anxiety. And so you're right, David, there's so much more for us to talk about. Maybe we'll have a second episode. No. We'll have to. We'll have to follow up. But I think the best thing is that I'm here for you, and this is my passion, as you can tell. And so I work with schools, I work with students, I do professional development for school districts, and not just music teachers. I work with all fine arts. I work with entire school districts, all teachers. I do one-on-one coaching. But this is my calling in life, is to serve, and this is the way I can to encourage and inspire others to achieve their full potential.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. You are truly a treasure, and you are truly inspiring.
Thank you, David. So are you, my friend.
You're too nice. All right. Well, let's talk about next week. Can you believe Dr. Arau? That was great. Like I said, I think I guess I should sum up saying like the growth mindset starts it all. And I just want to remind you all, be nice to yourself, because sometimes we are so hard on ourselves, especially this time of year. Well, for some of you on vacation, it's a great time of year. For the of us still going, we're really hard on ourselves. So I'm just kidding. Anyway, take care of yourself. It is important that your culture is important to you. All right, let's talk about next week. Next week, we have Jabari Tovar, and he wants to talk about alternative paths to public school education, self-care, and positive self-talk as a teacher, and managing work-life balance. He is known for being a culturally responsive curriculum, which is one of the tenets of the teaching philosophy. He's an instrumental music teacher and percussion specialist at Salem Public Schools in Massachusetts. Well, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for tuning in today's episode of Culture Before Content here on the Music for All Podcast Network, where we are immensely grateful to Yamaha for their continued support as our national presenting sponsor. Remember, share us on Facebook, share it on your socials, and I hope to see you all next week. Have a good one.